Today we're talking about being terrified of conflict. People that avoid conflict, confrontation, sharing things that are bothering them. If you're terrified of conflict and shut down when someone is upset, you may have an avoidant attachment style. When we grow up in homes where we do not learn repair, there will always be what we call rupture and repair. There will always be some disagreements and some conflicts in relationships. And when I talk about rupture, I'm not talking about abuse or volatile behavior. I'm talking about things that can get like a heated discussion or disagreement. And so disagreements and having a little bit of conflict is normal. If you say, well, my husband and I or my mate and I never have conflict, we've gone years without having an argument, I'm telling you that's not healthy, because there are things that I would say that you mostly push things under the rug and you avoid talking about things. So when we do have some disagreement or conflict in relationships, if you grew up not learning repair, openly talking how to resolve the conflict and looking for a solution, that is repair, that's healthy. But if you grew up in a home, as I did, where there was conflict, there was violence, there was domestic violence, and then nobody talked about the fight, nobody talked about the violence, nobody talked about the abuse. The next day, things just moved on as normal. And so there was no repair. There was always avoidance. And so I grew up then really avoiding conflict, because conflict to me was scary. To me, conflict or disagreement meant an emotional blow up. So subconsciously, then we learn that conflict is a threat, and so we will avoid or be terrified of conflict. And so to avoid conflict, what are some of the things we do? We get into that codependency behavior where we learn to appease, we learn to placate, say whatever you want, I don't care, we give up. We don't speak our truth. We become people pleasers to avoid upset, to not upset the person. And the problem with this is that the issue is this causes resentment and creates a situation where our needs are not met and our needs are being ignored. And so then we get resentful because we're the ones who have not spoke up about our needs or spoke our truth or created a boundary. We've avoided, and then we get resentful because our needs aren't being met. As adults, we are responsible to relearn conflict. Conflict is natural and can actually create emotional intimacy and growth. If there is conflict and then there's sitting down to have those hard conversations to resolve and repair, to create it to be a win-win situation, or how can we compromise with this where we both feel comfortable, and you come to that solution, it creates intimacy and closeness in the relationship. So unlearning avoiding conflict can look like this. One, it can mean that I speak up. And when I speak up, I say, I feel like, not you do this, or you make me mad, or you have this problem. It's I feel like. Remember, we don't want to attack the person. We want to talk about the behavior, this behavior. So number one, we can speak up and say, I feel like. Number two is, I let people know when I feel uncomfortable or I need space to think. So we can say, this behavior is I'm feeling uncomfortable. Or I'm feeling a little uncomfortable and not safe right now, and I need to have a little space so we can come back to this conversation when we're both calmed down. So that's also being true and honoring yourself. Number 3, we can practice saying no. And I know you've heard no is a complete sentence. So practice saying no, or no, that doesn't feel right to me. One of the things about speaking up and unlearning being afraid of conflict is to remember to not always feeling like you have to defend yourself. So say, no, this isn't comfortable for me, and then going through this long spiel of explaining why you're saying no, because then it sounds like you're apologizing to your decision, or you're trying to get them, it's important for you to get them to understand and to agree with you. So try to avoid over explaining and defending your stance and how you're feeling, or saying no. The next one, number 4, is I stop assuming and am direct, and I ask. Don't assume. Assuming always gets us in trouble. So be direct. Don't we like direct people that just say, hey, I'm going to ask you something. Is this how you're feeling, or is this what you meant, or this is what I'm feeling? Can I ask you where you're coming from with this? So we're direct and we ask. Don't assume. Number 5, if I am allowed to disappoint people. One of the things that we do also that is a codependent behavior is when we are trying to take care of ourselves and our own feelings, we are worrying about what the other person's reaction and what their feelings are going to be. And it is impossible times to take care of our own feelings and someone else's at the same time. So it's okay if we're disagreeing, or we have a different opinion or perception on something, or different reality that's ours, and someone is disappointed in our view or how we feel or how we think. It is okay to disappoint people. Remember, when we're communicating and we're confronting and we're bringing something out into the open, we can do that assertively and be direct without being aggressive. Next is I can protect myself with limits. So we are responsible to protect ourselves. We have limits. If the discussion, the disagreement, if there is something that is getting out of hand, or the voices are being elevated, or someone starts shouting, we can have limits and say, whoa, wait a minute. Or we can have a safe word that we say that stops and says, I'm not feeling comfortable right now. I'm going to have to think about this, or I need to walk away from this. So we set limits about how far we'll go in the conversation. And number 7, I understand conflict is not bad and can be a way to get closer to people. So these are some way where we have to start practicing healthier behaviors. And when we're practicing healthy behaviors that aren't familiar to us, what do? Like we're trying anything new. We fail forward. It's okay if we don't get it right the first couple times. It's just like when we are learning to set boundaries. It's uncomfortable if we've never set boundaries in our relationship before, and so we may not do it quite right in the beginning. Or if we have we use the tool of detaching. We may not detach correctly in the beginning. We may detach being very angry, and almost like the person feels like we may be punishing them, but we're really trying to learn to detach emotionally with love, but we kind of have to learn how to do that. So in conflict and confrontation, we have to also practice how to have healthy conflict. And we do that by practicing it, and that's being true to ourselves, and that is part of the way that we heal in the recovery of codependency.